We're here for our checks. Sir.
Okay.
Commissioner Isbell, if you would, just bring us up to speed with the numbers as far as air quality goes and the index of where things stand, because a lot of people are making sure that if we ask that question so they know how to go about the thing. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So the numbers, first off, the forecasting is very, very hard to do. If you look at the forecast from earlier this week, they've been off by hundreds of points. So things are progressing in the right direction. Today, we're looking in the mid to high hundreds, low 200s across the city. As the mayor did say earlier, we are looking to see some wind coming from offshore that should move smoke back into the city sometime this afternoon. But then over the next few days, things will progressively continue to get better. Through Tuesday, when we have a front moving through, that should push everything out. But again, smoke modeling and pollution modeling is very, very hard to do. And generally, there's only a 24-hour forecast that comes out once a day for the following day.
Mr. Mayor, this is a migrant-related question. Are you disappointed that the administration only received about $100 million? That's a fraction of the amount that you guys even spend on a weekly basis, monthly basis. And do you anticipate more money to be coming from the federal government?
Well, first, I just really want to thank Senator Schumer and Congressman Jeffries. I spoke with them after the first allocation of dollars and really told them that we have a disproportionate number of asylum seekers and we need more. Senator Schumer and Congressman Jeffries said they were going to fight hard for us. And this next round, I believe we got $100 million. The closest to us was nowhere near that. And it's a real identification on the part of, I believe, the White House and the Washington that, hey, New York City has an issue here. We're hoping that now we continue to move in the direction that New York City receive the resources they deserve. $100 million, I'm done, that's an important question. $100 million is the beginning of the acknowledgement of the problem, but this is a $4.3 billion problem. And so we are pleased with the acknowledgement that New York City should receive the proportionate share of it, but we still have to deal with this long-term issue. This is not sustainable. We're still getting hundreds of people in that are coming each day. We need to allow people to work. We need to deal with immigration reform. That's important. And we need to tell those municipalities that are receiving money, the money you're getting is not to use for busing to New York City. That just makes no sense to me.
Question about based on the numbers that Zach just talked about, and maybe Dr. Boston can weigh on this, the Yankees are supposed to play at 4 o'clock this afternoon. You talked about, Mayor, that the smoke is supposed to come back in. Would you advise that game to be postponed based on the numbers you see now and what you anticipate this afternoon?
Thanks, Andrew. I think your question says it all. It's a little bit unpredictable. So right now, the health guidance hasn't changed. Stay indoors. It's the best way to protect yourself from exposure, particularly as we're seeing changes in the numbers, changes in the levels of pollution. If you can't stay indoors, go out, and you have to be outside, wear a high-quality mask like the one you have around your neck. And avoid outdoor gatherings, avoid outdoor events. If organizers of events can move those events indoors or postpone those events, that remains our recommendation. That guidance hasn't changed.
Just a quick follow-up with the mask distribution. Just a real quick question for the mayor on mask distribution.
Okay, hold on. We're going to be as lean as possible. There's a lot of questions out there, and we want to end some of the uncertainty. So we're not going to be the normal hard-noser that we are in our press, because we understand there's a lot of questions. We're going to be as lean as possible, but when it's time for me to bounce, I'm going to bounce. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, just on the mask distribution.
Yes.
Does any part of you think we've got all these masks, the distribution could have started sooner? We knew the air was bad Tuesday. Most of the handout is happening now, 2 days later today. Could that have been expedited?
No, I think that, first of all, I'm extremely impressed, and I said this during COVID. We have the best mobilization deployment tool that was underutilized in COVID. That's our police precincts and our firehouses. They are experts at deployment and execution. We immediately kicked in gear with a plan, our first deputy mayor, the police commissioner. This team has been behind the scenes, getting those thousands of masks into our precincts, letting people know where they're located to pick up. Even the fact that going on the ground in those NYC facilities, knocking on doors. No, this team is humming. And so people, when you are in the stands, it's easy to say what the quarterback should have done. But try getting sacked by a 300-pound lineman and then get up and call the next play and score a touchdown. That's the real skill. And so we're doing it. And I know we're doing it. I know how to deploy, how to execute, how to mobilize. This is what I spent my life doing, and this team did it the right way.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
This weekend we got the Governor's Ball coming up, Belmont Stakes, Puerto Rican Day Parade. Do you envision issuing some sort of recommendation to change those plans, or do you envision the city, you know, with the situation possibly getting better, changing the recommendations for people to stay inside and encourage them to go outside?
Well, I know our Puerto Rican event was here tonight, right? Reception. Okay. We were doing our Puerto Rican Day reception at City Hall at Gracie Mansion, but it was going to be outdoors, so we postponed it. You know, we're going to practice what we preach. As Dr. Fassan said, our directions have not changed, and there's a reason the term game time decision is introduced into sports. Some of this stuff is just so unpredictable. You know, Mother Nature is going to do what Mother Nature desires to do. And so those who are hosting these events, we're going to give our recommendations. We haven't reached to the point of mandating, but it is going to come down to the organizers. The doctor was clear on what our recommendations are. We don't know what's going to happen over the weekend. I'm looking forward, if the weather permits, to march into the parade. But this stuff is a game time decision based on what both the doctor and the commissioner is going to continue to advise people on.
Hi, Mayor Adams. I wanted to ask you about two stories from my colleague, Bill Gonin. The first, your sheriff, Anthony Miranda, was involved in a shady COVID scam that told people they can prevent getting COVID. Maybe Dr. Fassan wants to chime in, by wearing a badge. I wanted to ask, and also some of the people he was involved with, if it raises any concerns for you about his judgment as sheriff. And the second story is about your sister-in-law, Sharon Adams, who's appointed a special initiative job at the DOE. I'm curious, was that job in the open market? How did she get that job? I know there's some concerns about, obviously, COIB and conflict of interest. But if you think there's any concerns for the general public that there is this sort of appointment of perhaps questionable people in the term of Sheriff Miranda's position, and then your sister-in-law getting a $150,000 year job at the DOE. Okay,
first with Anthony Miranda, I don't know about the shady aspect of it. I gotta read.
COVID can be prevented by wearing a badge, and maybe Dr. Fassan can chime in.
No, I think that I want to look at the story, look at exactly what the allegations are, and I don't know. We're still trying to figure out COVID. So I really don't know, and I don't know exactly what was the heart of that. Let me look through it, and I can make a better assessment of it. The DOE will answer your sister-in-law. I intentionally have a firewall behind what happens in the DOE and what happens here in City Hall. I do know this: Sharon is an educator, well qualified, many years. I know she applied and she was going to come to DOE years ago, long before I became mayor. And I know that there are some very clear rules that the city has in place on if someone is going to be employed, if the mayor of the city of New York is related to that person. We comply with those rules. Now, one could look and say, well, I wish something could be done this way or that way. No, there are rules. There are rules, there are guidelines. We comply with the rules and guidelines. That's why we create these rules and guidelines. And I know she's a great educator, and I'm excited about anyone that wants to go into our the Department of Education and help our children. Like, remember Tracy? Tracy's been a principal. She's been an administrator. She's an excellent educator. She turned around schools. Should she leave the DOE because her boo became mayor? I don't think so. Come on, let's stop this. Make sure you get Dana, because she had an interesting story today in the Times.
I wanted to ask a lawsuit filed a few weeks ago. An NYPD officer says courtesy cards issued by the police unions. Do you know anything about this practice? Are you concerned? Basically, he says, I think half the people he pulled over on Staten Island have these cards. They get out of traffic infractions. Do you know about this practice? Are you aware of it?
I think I read the story in one of the papers, and I believe that officer stated he gave those courtesy cards to his loved ones and family members. You know, is that the same story?
It's the same story. I think he's saying that they get 30 a year. They give them out to people who mow their lawns, people who give them discounts at restaurants. He's saying on Staten Island, half the people he pulls over have these cards.
Okay.
So it's pretty widespread, and you know, it basically suggests people who know cops get different treatment than people who don't.
But he did give cards to his family members.
He acknowledged that, yes, it was
He did.
widespread. I think
Okay, that's interesting. I don't know what happened there. I know police officers, they use his discretion when necessary. When I was a cop, I would use his discretion based on if someone did something that I have the power of discretion. We don't want heavy-handed policing. We don't want anyone using any devices to, any way get in the way of proper police practices. And from what I know, those PBA cards, those courtesy cards were used correctly and not in an abusive way. And so, I think this is in the court. Let the court decide how it's going to be played out.
Thank you.
Hey, Dana.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you?
Good.
Last year, when New York City released a nuclear attack PSA, the city said it was important for New Yorkers to understand that the city had plans for all sorts of imminent things. But yesterday, Zach, you said that there was no off-the-shelf plan for wildfires. And I'm wondering, given the growing preponderance of wildfires and global warming, why there were no off-the-shelf plans for that, and was that a failure?
Zach, you are not answering that. Let me be very clear. Climate change is creating unpredictable weather patterns. This administration and the previous administration, let me be very clear, under de Blasio, under Bloomberg, probably those are the three mayors that really had to deal with this. Bloomberg, de Blasio, and Eric all had to deal with this. There are going to be uncertainties. We're going to try to figure them out. We're going to respond as they come. So if someone wants to be built into, you didn't figure out every type of climate catastrophe, hey, the meteor fell to the planet Earth. Y'all didn't have a plan for that? We're not living that way. We know where our hearts are. We know how well we do our job. We know how well we execute, and we're going to continue to do that. So if you want to play, why didn't you know every problem that this is going to create? That's up to you. I know how well this team responded. I know what Zach and his team has done over there and during these emergencies, the deployment and the execution, and we're going to continue to do that. And as these new parts of climate change is going to hit our city and country, we're going to be the leaders in that. And that's what Zach and his team is doing.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, is there any plan to use, let's say, sanitation department or fire department? Like, sanitation department has the street cleaners where they inject the water to tamp down some of the dust and soot that accumulates, or have the fire department, I don't know, maybe use the sprays?
Tell me about that, because if you got a good idea, I would like to know about it.
Usually, you hose down your front because there's pollen in the air, and it just tamps everything down. It'll tamp the dust down and tamps down the pollen. So I didn't know if, city facility or city trucks could be used for something like that.
I don't know if that would work for smoking in Canada, but I'm happy to look into it.
Since you always have some great suggestions, you and Kate, we will have you connect with Zach.
We're hiring too, so.
You know what I mean?
And we are hiring. We have better benefits than Tintin.
Mr. Mayor, so earlier in the week, several council members, the speaker, finance chair went down to D.C. to lobby for migrant funds, among other things. You've been calling on them to do that. Go to Albany, go to D.C. for a long time. What do you think about them doing that? Would you like to see more of it?
April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. It's a lot of months. Been saying this for a long time. I'm happy that they did. I'm glad that the speaker brought a delegation down. This has been a real feeling as though was something that only we saw. This is the #1 crisis in our city right now. #1 crisis. Every representative should be talking about this issue. And so the speaker is going to brief me. I spoke with her yesterday. She's going to brief me on the trip. But we all need to be advocating on behalf of New York right now on this crisis. And we're looking forward to getting everyone. Everyone should go down. By the way, did Brad go down? He did? I'm sorry to hear you. What? Brad Lander, the loudest person in the city, has yet to go to Washington to deal with the #1 issue that this city faces. Think about that for a moment. The loudest, I think Eric should, the loudest person in the city has yet to go to Washington, D.C. How many times? But think about it, think about it. Do I have to ask the controller that must have our financial stability? Should I be asking the controller that determines our financial stability that, hey, Brad, how about going to Washington and tell them we should get our share? The loudest person, we have not seen him in Washington, D.C. I mean, y'all don't find that strange? You gotta find it strange. The loudest person, no, I want to say this again. The loudest person who is in charge of our finances, he's called Controller Brad Lander. He has not gone to Washington, D.C. and fought on behalf of New Yorkers to get their fair share. He has not gone to Washington, D.C. Stop trying to be the shadow mayor and be the controller and go to Washington, D.C., Brad, and get us our fair share. I'm sorry.
Coalition for the Homeless released a statement saying this air quality situation is highlighting issues with amending right to shelter. We have more New Yorkers on the street with the air quality situation. Just your comments on their statement, and has that been an issue with this air quality situation?
Well, I'm not understanding their statement. What they said, people should stay on the streets?
The shelter changes are being sought with it, that more people will be on the street for an air quality situation like this. Has that been a problem, and what is your comment on that?
Oh my God. No. Next question.
Mayor, you've twice now very diplomatically resisted calls to force the cancellation of big events that are coming up. And I acknowledge you say this is very unpredictable. The Yankee game is in 4 hours, though, sir. We seem to have some sense of what 4 hours will look like. Why are you not pushing that one to shut down based on what your own health experts are saying?
No, we have not been diplomatic. I think Dr. Fassan has been clear. Here's our recommendations. You know, we're not at the point where we are mandating the shutdown. We're giving very clear, sound recommendation. I thought Dr. Fassan was very clear. Now each entity must make the determination of how they're going to use our recommendation. We're at the recommendation phase.
Sorry, sir. Are you not worried about the tens of thousands of New Yorkers who will go? I paid a few $100 for this, you know, weather be damned, I gotta go.
I think we've been very clear with our recommendations. Now each venue will make the determination based on those recommendations. If we ever reach a point, as we have shown, if we reach a point where you have to shut down things, we're willing to do so. The precedent is already there. We're not at that point. We're at the point where each entity will make their determination based on the sound recommendation by the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene.
Last question. Hey, Mr. Mayor, it's still unclear whether the state legislature will get to a deal on housing this session. Are you frustrated by the potential?
Which one?
Get to a deal on housing this
Yes.
session? Are you frustrated by the potential lack of
Yes,
action?
yes. You know, I think that housing crisis is real. And every survey you saw, people talk about public safety and housing. And the reason we have a housing crisis is the inventories. Everyone knows that. We have Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer and our Chief Housing Officer. We had a 500,000 ambitious moonshot plan to build more houses. We need to convert the millions of square feet of commercial real estate. We can convert it into housing. We need to raise the FAR. We need a stimulus with, you know, we call it 421A, but it's a tax incentive. We need to build more housing. if we don't come out of Albany with a housing plan and put those bills on the floor, then we're not going to have housing in the pipeline. And we had certain units that would have been built with the tax incentive, but because of COVID, they had to hit pause. So we should at least say, okay, let's go to those buildings that would have been built if we didn't have COVID. We knew it was an emergency. And so if we leave Albany without a housing plan, then all that advocacy that people are saying that we need to have more housing, more housing, more housing, and we're not doing what's needed to build that housing, that's a travesty. And I'm hoping that, cooler heads prevail. I've had conversations with the leaders up there, and they've been very cooperative in some major victories. We're going to walk away this term. We're really pleased with what we have been able to accomplish. But housing is one of our top issues, and we need to come out of Albany. I'm hoping in the next couple of days we come out of Albany with a housing plan.
Students be in school tomorrow, Mayor Adams? I know elementary school students already head off, but high school students are set. Do you think they'll be in school tomorrow?
Hey,
Dr. Hassan, do you think a badge can prevent COVID?
Lincoln Wrestler is asking why you didn't order a code red. Did you order a code red?